Greetings and welcome to our virtual Enlightenment Salon of August 14th, 2022. I am pleased to offer this fascinating conversation for you today about our need to find and maintain the inner strength to persevere in the pursuit of radical life extension during what are admittedly quite challenging times. So joining us today, we have our panel of U.S. Transhumanist Party officers and members, including our Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia, our Legislative Director, Jason Geringer, our member and founder of the Human Achievement Alliance, Dr. Edward Hudgens, and our biotechnology advisor and founder and CEO of Sierra Sciences, Dr. Bill Andrews. And our special guest is James Strole. He is the executive director of the Coalition for Radical Life Extension, which is the organization that puts on RADFest. RADFest, of course, is the premier conference for longevity advocacy and for longevity enthusiasts from around the world to attend. And this year, RADFest is going to be held in October in San Diego, California. This will be the 7th annual RADFest, and I'm pleased to have attended all of them. I'm going to be there myself. And today, I am very happy to have Jim on as a guest to discuss the central topic of our conversation, which is how we maintain that motivation to persevere in the face of adversity, despite all of the problems of the world. How do we essentially keep our focus on the goal of continuing to live longer, healthier, better, and making the kinds of decisions that are required in order to achieve that goal. So thank you very much, Jim, for joining us. We're honored to have you with us today. And please tell us some of your thoughts in this area.
Thank you, Gennady. Thank you for having me on, and greetings to everybody. I'm so happy to be on here with you, and thank you for all the great work you're doing to help advance, radical life extension. I'm just going to begin by telling you that I think what I'm going to express is something probably all of you have kind of one time or another asked yourself, because this journey that we're on, as magnificent as it is, I mean, to me, going for super longevity, radical life extension, immortality, whatever any one of us in this is a very challenging, very exciting and very challenging pursuit. I've been actually turned on to the idea, as I think most of you know, from an early age, like some of you. I was 11 years old when I first began to have thoughts around, why can't we end death? Why can't we have, what's called heaven here on earth is how I thought about it at that time. I saw that something was wrong, with death. I had a person that was very close to me. That was my first experience. My grandmother died, and I was very impacted by that. And so that led to me having the feeling that, hey, something's wrong. It was painful to have that experience. I felt like that's not the way life should be. And when I asked my mother, I said, when am I going to see, grandmother again? She said, well, when you die and go to heaven. And I said, oh, well, that didn't sound too good that I had to die first to see her. And so, I was a kid. So since then I've pursued, though, I had this in my heart because my mother said, hey, why don't you pursue that idea of creating heaven here on earth and ending death. And some of you share those same things. Bill Andrews, for example, Dr. Bill Andrews has shared his experience of that, of his dad telling him at 11 years old to pursue curing aging and death. And Bill's had that in his person all this time. And I think Gennady's expressed, you've expressed to me that you've had this feeling about life of ending death. And so what is this? What is this that's in our bodies? What is it that connects us this way when so much of the other world, the rest of the world yet, doesn't get it for various reasons? And this is a huge discussion, but I had a personal experience. I'm just going to cut right to the chase on this. I had a personal experience about 4 months ago is when it started. And I was, having kind of a very, I'll say, deep conversation with myself. I kind of call that a travail, and about, hey, what I'm feeling now and what I'm seeing in the world with all the conflict. And I'm talking to different of our top scientists and doctors throughout our network that are sometimes having big issues, not only handling patients sometimes that are so sick, but also being able to get funding, some of the scientists for the great work they have, and the difficulty in that. Even though there's a lot of good projects that are underway, many of these maybe I get the feeling sometimes are misfunded. The money isn't going to where we can really make the difference. And so we have all these issues that we're still dealing with. And I thought, I don't want to be just another generation that passes this, this baton, onto another generation. And I think so much is lost when we do that. I felt like this aging and death needs to be cured, within our time. We need to do everything we can to reach it. But I thought at the same time, it's going to take an enormous amount of energy, maybe way beyond what I have right now in my own person. Even though I'm healthy, I'm strong, I thought, this is, as I begin to look at it, this job, this work is so much more than we even realize. I mean, that's what I think. I mean, it involves so much, not only getting the funding, the support for all these great protocols and the work being done, but the issues we have of people conflicting with it, the criticism that sometimes we have to face, and also the challenge in this day and age of just staying alive long enough to live forever. And so these are huge, but yet I think it's a beautiful adventure at the same time. But I started thinking, hey, what is it going to take? And I thought, so as I kind of gave to this in conversations with myself for a while, I began to feel that, it's going to take something stronger than what I'm feeling in my own person at that moment. And like I say, this was about 4 months ago. And I thought, what is that? And that's where I came across, and I'm just going to use the idea that there is a immortal bloodline, that is I'll use the term, in our bodies. And many of our scientists have talked about the innate ability, the potential of immortality in the body, the germline, et cetera, et cetera. And what I'm just calling this today is the immortal bloodline that is in our body. It's really in all of us, and it's in there for us to tap into, something we've never tapped into before. And too often we're looking for everything on the outside of us for our strength, when really this immortality is going to come from within us. We're the creators, and by having this strength, by tapping into this, what I call the immortal bloodline, is going to give us that strength and that clarity, and the inspiration to really manifest what we're all dreaming about. But to me, unless we tap into something like that, the energy we have, the power we have to do this is limited to really get it done within the time we want to get it done. So I kind of look for, you might say, some type of supernatural strength beyond what I had experienced in myself. But really, I had a person tell me, well, it's not just, when I expressed this to a few people, it's not just supernatural. It's something that's really there in the body that we haven't maybe tapped into yet. So as I begin myself to open myself up for it, to tap into that, I begin to feel, I would actually sometimes when I go to bed at night, I'd lay there and I would have conversations with myself, and I'd get to this and about this bloodline, and I begin to feel a new energy. I mean, interesting enough, I begin to feel a new energy and excitement I haven't felt for years. And if anybody knows me, I'm an excitable person. I'm an inspirational guy. But I begin to feel an energy and excitement I've never felt before. And I begin to feel an opening of visions of how to get this where we want to get it. And I begin to share it with other people. And when I begin to share that with other people, it stirred in them. You might say it stirred in them. It triggered in them this immortal bloodline that is innate there in our bodies. And they begin to share revelations and begin to feel an energy that they haven't felt before. And this just wasn't some, airy-fairy thing. It was very, very physical. And so as I began to pursue this, I actually, I was telling Bill Andrews this morning, I actually came across some writings of Jesus. Now, I'm not religious, and in fact, I'm an agnostic from that level. But I see Jesus as a man that actually religion was created after him. He was before Christianity, but I also saw that I was drawn to his writings and recently, and I saw that really he was speaking about immortality, and he was possibly the first human being. Now, this is like I'm saying, this is just my personal experience in this. He was possibly the first human being that actually was able to experience a full manifestation of this bloodline. To me, he spoke about it. He spoke about life here on earth. He spoke about eternal life, and people would at that time would try to relate to him as it being spiritual life still. But he said no. He said the spiritual life had been going on for thousands of years. He said, I've come to bring forth new life. And he spoke about the physical body, that there was that ability to actually have the kingdom of heaven here on earth now. And so, but most of the people at that time, because it was very primitive times, even though we experience that here now too, but it was very primitive then, couldn't understand really where he was coming from. He was, in my mind, murdered. His message still imprinted human beings at that time. This is why we have billions of people today that actually were impacted by him on some level. Okay, even though Christianity, the religion, took it and built something out of it that, in my mind, wasn't really where he wanted it to go. But he made an impact. And why I'm bringing up him is that this is in the human DNA. Okay. And he helped manifest that. And even before that, there was people from the human strand that were actually giving, I'll say, insights and desires to live immortality, to be immortal, to live long, unlimited lives, even before him. But they were more like, I'll say, inklings of it. They gave more just small insights to it. Whereas Jesus really had an experience fully in his body, I think, of being and talking of and being physically immortal. So the only reason that's important to me is that consequently he manifested a imprint in the human body, in the DNA, and I think that imprint is here today for us to tap into. Now, he said at that time that people coming and would do greater works. So my question is this the greater works? I think so. What is greater than ending aging and death? What is greater? We all know. I know I'm preaching to the choir there because we all know there's nothing greater. I mean, if you don't have your body, you really have nothing, And so I think he was speaking of the kingdom, not being somewhere out in the sky somewhere, but the kingdom being the body. And so today, we have the opportunity, and I'm just experiencing. You can feel me today. I'm just experiencing a new awakening in my own body to this, a new energy, an energy that I personally feel can take me and all of us, and that actually can experience this into the energy that we need to accomplish what we need to do to accomplish an ending aging and death. Like I say, this journey is takes much more than any of us imagine. Any of us that have been in this for a while, we know that. I mean, Bill Andrews, for example, he's got this great therapy ready to go, and he's had to go through so much for so long. I've sometimes wondered, I said, wow, Bill, how do you handle this? But every day he's going. I call him and encourage him, and I think that's important. But I think today we can tap into this new energy with each other and build up on that. I want to speak about this at RadFest because there's so many people, for example, that are kind of losing heart. They're older. They don't think they're going to make it. They don't think they have a chance. And I want to tell them today they do have a chance. But we need to accelerate this in a way we never have. But it's going to take an energy that we've never had before in our bodies. But I think this is the way that I've experienced to really tap into it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you very much, Jim. And you clearly showed a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm in delivering these remarks. It's always quite impressive to hear you speak because you are quite a passionate, charismatic orator, and you certainly draw people's attention. You draw people's attention in ways that lead them to think, lead them to consider some possibilities that they haven't thought of before. And one of those is this idea that Jesus was, in the words of our friend Daniel Twett, perhaps the first transhumanist, at least in that kind of framing that you provided, that he was talking, and this is true actually based on even official Christian theology. He wasn't talking about some sort of spiritual afterlife. He was talking about resurrection in the flesh. And when we had conversations with the Christian Transhumanist Association, with the Mormon Transhumanist Association, they confirmed this to us. So there's definitely a lot of truth in what you're saying. And I think it is also worthwhile to consider, what is it that motivates those of us who have been enthusiastic about radical life extension and the defeat of aging and death from an early age? Because as you pointed out, when I was a child, when I first learned about human mortality, I recognized the injustice of it right away. And I was inconsolable for quite some time as a child after learning that people died, because how could this be? This seemed to be completely undeserved. If somebody did not commit a heinous crime, why would they be deserving of the death penalty? And I think a lot of children experience this kind of reaction, but many of them are amenable to various tactics, various culturally evolved mechanisms that are designed to kind of pacify them and get them to accept human mortality as either inevitable or even somehow justified. And some of those justifications are unfortunately religious, as in certain interpretations of Christianity, but many other belief systems as well. Others are secular. There are a lot of atheists, unfortunately, these days who repeat statements like, well, we are all stardust, so why should it matter if we go back to being stardust? Well, I think it matters that we are unique, precious, irreplaceable individual universes right now. And if the body dies, as you pointed out, then that universe gets extinguished. But I would be interested in the thoughts of anyone on this panel who also refused to accept death from an early age. And what do you think motivated you? What do you think makes you different from the vast majority of humans who have somehow, unfortunately, reconciled themselves to death? Because I think identifying those differences and bringing them out can help us find that, let's say, motivation in other people and figure out how to bring it out in them, whatever age they are, whatever their prior life story has been. But if we can very clearly identify what that motive force is within ourselves, we can help others discover it as well. So, Bill, of course, you have been influenced from an early age by your father, who asked you essentially to work on curing aging, and you agreed and you devoted your life to this. Tell us a bit more about what went on inside your mind as a child, how you got to the point where you refused to accept aging and death as inevitable.
You know, personally, when I was that young, it was so far away that I wasn't even imagining my own death yet. But I was pretty much just imagining, God, my parents are going to die and other things. And so I just thought, this is nonsense. There's got to be some way to fix this problem. And it just like my father said, he didn't know why nobody's done this before. why somebody hasn't already cured aging. And at that time, I thought maybe it is a simple thing to do. So I had no idea that I was embarking on the challenge that I did go on. It's just, personally, when I was 10 years old, I just thought nobody seemed to really care. But now I know better, and I just know it's a big job. And so yeah, I wasn't like it was like a death sentence and things like that. Because I was too young at the time to be thinking. Later on, boy, and after college and stuff like that, I started becoming really worried that we got to go fast here, otherwise I'm going to end up being one of those people that succumb before we have a cure. And now I'm 70 years old, and it's getting closer and closer.
Yes, well, you're 70 years old, but you still run ultra marathons. You ran the Marlette 50K yesterday, and you won your age group, correct?
I was the only one in my age group. It's like, all I can say is that, well, I beat the other 500 million people that were in my age group who didn't even sign up. But yeah, it was. I'm surprised you weren't there, Gennady. I was expecting to see you there.
I was there. I ran the 10-mile race. It's that we didn't cross paths because I think my group started 5 minutes after your group, and of course the 50K run takes much longer than the 10-mile run.
And I was social distancing to the max. In fact, I couldn't even. I was in last place just because I didn't want to pass anybody because I'd get too close to them. Last place for the first 9 miles, and then the trail opened up to a dirt road, and then I passed like 30 people. Finally started moving ahead, but it was like, yeah. So I was not socializing at all. I was kind of just there trying to protect myself from COVID and be able to do the run. Glad to hear you were there. I just thought you'd be in the 50K though.
Mm-hmm. And I think this should be quite an inspiration to a lot of our viewers that indeed at the age of 70, Bill is far ahead of everybody in his age group who isn't doing these kinds of long distance runs or who can't do these kinds of long distance runs for whatever reason, because Bill has maintained excellent health and the ability to engage in what is a very strenuous activity. I know because I've run 50K races with large amounts of elevation gain. This was like 4,500 feet of elevation gain. So clearly this, going back to our discussion about motivation, the motivation to continue to live, to continue to achieve what it takes to stay in good health, this is present to an immense extent within Bill. Now, Ed, what were some of your early experiences that shaped your motivation to pursue life extension? I think Ed is giving us a thumbs up. But,
I just wanted to say, as a 70-year-old who jogs, I want to compliment Bill on that.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And I'm also curious, when did you first encounter the idea of human mortality, and how did you respond to it, and how did you come around to supporting indefinite life extension? So Edward or anybody else on the panel, if you have thoughts to share. We do have a comment from Sergei Gubkin, and he actually provided a bit of a narrative of his story. He believed that there must be cycles of lives from age 4, and then during ages 5 to 10, he was trying not to think about us being stuck with death. So kind of putting it out of his mind as a child. That makes sense because often children are told, well, you're too young to worry about this. And then from ages 15 to 16 to 30, he was also thinking, well, we are stuck with death. And then he writes that he was hoping that there might be rebirth or messianic or alien resurrection. But he recognized that science provides no basis for any of those kinds of assumptions. So he was, after the age of 30, thinking that he needed another chance in life. And then he found movements that say we're not stuck with death, and there's no proof that we are inherently consigned to death. So he, I think, is saying that he has come around to the view that we need to fight death through scientific means rather than essentially consoling ourselves or hoping that there might be some sort of supernatural way to rescue our existence. Mm-hmm. And he says, even if we can't cure aging, even if the deterioration of the body with time is irreversible, at least we tried. So there is that motivation as well. We should at least try to do something to overcome this problem. We can't just fatalistically resign ourselves to it. And Edward, you gave that a thumbs up. Do you want to expand upon it?
Yeah, just my experience is kind of different. I've always been interested in science, and I'm sort of part of the liberty movement, as you well know. And I originally majored in physics and astronomy, if you haven't guessed from the photos on my wall here. But I was always so much enjoying the doing, whether it was the science or the political work or whatever it was. I was just always into enjoying the doing. So I really didn't think much about death. Obviously, I've experienced it. I've had a brother die, a sister die, very terrible situations, obviously. But I was always enjoying life so much and, just not thinking about death. I wanted to get as much out of it as I can and still do. And then, of course, as the anti-aging movement, longevity movement, transhumanist movement started to emerge because of my curiosity in science and all of these sort of things. I started to read into it and educate myself and say, wow, this is the next big thing. Well, actually, what can be bigger than not dying? And so I kind of made this part of what I am doing, with my life now. And, again, I hope I'm around, and I hope, to live to 200. I've got two 11-year-old daughters who, I want to see them go to Mars or something. But, that was always my positive attitude. And then when I saw this is possible, I said, damn, we got to jump into this. And part of what I'm trying to do is, as you know, form alliances, coalitions, and so forth of those across political spectrums, because what does that matter if you're going to die? And to make this a framing issue in our culture and in our society. So just the excitement I get out of life and then being able to do this, it just all pulls together very nicely.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Edward, for discussing your motivations, and certainly with regard to your goal to live to 200. We are all there along with you, and hopefully during that time, when we will all have 3 digits to our chronological ages, we're going to continue having these conversations in an even more robust physical state than we are in today, because the pursuit of knowledge, the pursuit of wonderful experiences in the world, the pursuit of self-improvement, they're never ending. It's an inexhaustible set of possibilities. And unfortunately, we are just limited right now by the condition of our physical bodies. But that limitation is one that urgently needs to be overcome. Our friend Didier Kernel writes in the chat that, in his opinion, the real main reason why a lot of people do not enthusiastically embrace life extension is terror management theory, because this is a framework that was actually extensively discussed by Ernest Becker in the 1960s and 1970s, essentially to go on with one's day-to-day lives. It is often helpful to avoid thinking of death and of the ravages of old age. Otherwise, it is just too frightening. But this is an unconscious process in most people. They don't deliberately will themselves to not think about death. It's easier to put it out of their minds and focus on day-to-day mundane kinds of issues, because then it's easier to resolve the mundane issues if one doesn't have this fear of death in the background. Of course, that's in the short term. In the long term, one ignores a very critical problem. Didier does write, once you know about this process, it is difficult to come back to ignorance. Sadly, this unfortunately faces a reality that, at least in his view, we're not sure if we will escape death of old age. It depends on how much effort we put into that goal. It depends on whether, not just as individuals, but as a civilization, we amass the will and the resources to pursue this fight to its conclusion. So I also wanted to ask Jason Geringer to share his experiences about what motivated him to support this fight against aging and death.
Well, it was kind of Bill Andrews, really. I mean, when me growing up, I've always been a real big fan of science, okay? And, in the back of my mind, I believed that science eventually will figure out a way to do almost anything. But for some reason, I never even gave aging a thought. I mean, I just, sort of inherently thought, well, that's always going to be impossible. So I can kind of see where, the layman is going to think, well, that's just, not true. But then, it really, really turned a corner when I watched Bill's presentation and he's breaking out the nuts and bolts of the science. And I was like, whoa, this is for real happening, So, even though I wasn't paying attention much, like DDA just said, how can you unlearn that? No, I'm all in now. Now that I know the science is coming, I'm with it. So here we go. That's it.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And now I wanted to also ask Art Ramon, when did you first become enthusiastic about life extension and what motivated you?
Yeah, actually, death has never been a fear for me. For me, the fear is living in a reduced capacity, like being quadriplegic or being horribly burned, where you barely have any appendages you can use, or and on top of that, aging. Not having a mind you can use. Not having a body that you can use. That you're so frail that you're just completely useless. That's what frightens me. To me, dying is easy. It's very easy. And what interests me in longevity is that I've pretty much wasted most of my life being in the rat race, having the career and not doing what I really wanted to do, which was art. So, I want to live longer so that I can continue my art career and improve, because I'm angry now that, I'm 50 and I've wasted my life being in the rat race, and now my body is failing me. My joints are shot, my hip joints are shot, my knee joints are shot. I've spent a lot of my life trying to stay fit and healthy, and it didn't work. So, right now I even have a heart problem now because of COVID. So I'm having to address that. So yeah, I'm angry. I didn't get to live the life I wanted to, and I want to live longer. As you can see, my age is 50. I'm going to add a few zeros to that and become an artist and not die because, the art collectors would just want to buy my art now so that it becomes, valuable after I'm dead, but I'm not going to let that happen. Living in a reduced capacity is what frightens me.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Art Ramon. I say let's give the art collectors a run for their money And let's hope that when you have 3 zeros after your age, they might reconsider their expectation of you dying, and they might instead shift their focus toward owning and featuring the art of a really long-lived artist. But I think you make an essential point, and that is we have such a wellspring of creativity within us, but such limited time to express it. And there are all of these other constraints. There are all of these other obligations. And sometimes we have to pursue them out of necessity, out of making a living or responding to the events in the world, which are not always pleasant. But once we are through doing that, our health may not be what it once was. And I think we all wish we had more time to express ourselves, to engage in the kinds of creative projects that really manifest the core of what we are as individuals. So, Jim, you've heard a lot of individual impressions now about what motivates people to pursue radical life extension and to be enthusiastic supporters of it. And as you can see, different people came to that set of realizations in different ways and sometimes at different points in their lives. Do you see common unifying elements among the responses that you heard?
Oh, yeah. Even though they're all different, there's different distinct personalities involved and they're different. I say, yes, a commonality. Getting back to what Art was expressing a little bit, and I think everyone, I think, if not consciously, unconsciously, feels this a little bit, but Art said it very well, that he's been disappointed now at being 50 and not, getting where he really wants to get, maybe wasting a great deal of his time. And I just want to say to you, Art, that's why I'm speaking about what I'm speaking about, because I don't think you are, but I want to say to you, by no means give up, because this is why I'm bringing out what I'm bringing out about this bloodline, because there's a whole new, I'll say, refreshing and almost like reborn experience that can happen. And I think that has to happen on some level in all of us to get where we want to get. That births us out of this death-oriented world, allow the consciousness of that. And that we realize that, I've been here 74 years now, and I have issues, and I know what you're talking about. That's just part of it. We all have these challenges, but we're working for a world that we don't have to deal with these type of challenges anymore. Our challenge really should be, as immortals or people who are invested in super longevity, is to what can we create? What is it new that we can bring about for ourselves and one another in this new world? So no matter what you're experiencing, I want to say there's an opportunity. And that's why I'm bringing out what I'm bringing out today, because I kind of felt like what you feel a few months ago, felt like, wow, I'm at this point. I've done a lot, but what have I really created? I haven't created yet what I really want to see happen all the way. And I thought, what is it that, am I going to have the energy to do that? And I want to tell you today, I've tapped into that. And it's for every human being that can tap into that. And that is that immortal bloodline that's in your body. It's like having, the only way I know how to put it is like having a reborn experience into that you were born to really live, that it's time for us to quit thinking out of this mortal consciousness that we've been plagued with, that drags us down and weighs heavy on us. And no matter whether you thought about death or not, it's still there in our bodies, and we're still having to deal with it. Many of us bury this feeling. We bury the idea of dying or et cetera, because we don't want to deal with it. It's part what was brought out by Didier. I think I pronounced his name right. I'm not sure, but that he brought out that the terror of death syndrome. Okay, most people don't want to even talk about it. I talk to people about immortality. They say, "Oh, I don't even think about death," and it's not. And the real reason they don't is because they don't want to face the terror of it. But today we're people that are facing everything, and we have to. But we also can look at that we have in our bodies. I think we have in our bodies a super immortal bloodline that we can tap into, and then have, like I said, the best way I can put it is like a reborn experience, because I've had that now. I had an experience 4 months ago, and it's just growing in me stronger all the time. And that's why I wanted to get on here and share this with all you guys, because you are beautiful people. You want to live. You have a desire to bring about a whole new world that is without aging and death. And so I want to build you in that. And this is the way we can build each other by I'll say calling out in each other this new bloodline and beginning to identify with it and leave behind the tyranny of death, this program that's in our bodies that has weighed so heavy on us. So Art, I want you to know that there's a whole new opportunity for you here in your life. Doesn't matter. Age really doesn't matter. It's about how you feel in your body today. And I want to stir that in you to feel something new and fresh, that your life really, it can just begin today. Can just begin in a whole new way.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you very much for those remarks, Jim. And Didier says that you said his name correctly and that your French accent is better than his English accent. So there it is.
Thank you.
Yes. Also, our friend John H. writes that, Jim, you are 5 years older than he is, but you look 10 years younger. So quite a nice compliment from John. And John also says to Art Ramon, perhaps if you do live to be 5,000, then the art collectors will be asking if you knew Leonardo da Vinci personally. And that's a good point, actually. Even though there are 5 centuries separating us from Leonardo da Vinci, in retrospect, in the minds of people 4 millennia from now, they will kind of all be blended together. We and the people in the Renaissance, and maybe even the people in the early 2nd millennium, just as we think of, say, ancient Egypt during the 3rd millennium BC, do we really, when we think back to ancient Egypt, unless we're very well versed in Egyptian history, distinguish between the Egyptians of 2600 BCE, that's approximately when the pyramids were built, and the Egyptians 500 years later in 2100 BCE, or say the time of Ramses II, who lived in the 1100s BCE, 1200s, 1100s, who was essentially 1400 years later than the builders of the pyramids. Yet most people, when they think back to ancient Egypt, they think of it as kind of one big continuous civilization. And I wonder if we live long enough, will people lump us with others who lived centuries before us? So we would be thought of in the same breath as Da Vinci or Thomas Jefferson or Henry Ford, even though right now, of course, we think of them as coming from very distinct time periods. So that's a fascinating thought, that maybe in the future we will be seen as the ancients, and hopefully the oldest living ancients, all of us who are currently in this conversation. Now, our friend Jason Mallory has an interesting observation. He writes, some people get high on the risk of death, for instance, skydivers, and those people feel that risking life can make them feel alive. And, you know, that's a very foreign kind of sensation to me. I don't feel that way. So in situations that prompt a high release of adrenaline, I just want to get out. Because I see the danger, I see the peril, and I wouldn't enjoy something like skydiving. I wouldn't even enjoy an extreme roller coaster ride. Of course, roller coasters are a lot safer than skydiving, and they're configured to be that way, but they're configured to exploit that sense of thrill seeking, of being on the edge. So I'm wondering, Jim, where do you think that sense of thrill seeking comes from? And is that really at odds with the desire to live longer, or can it be channeled in a more life-affirming direction?
Let me take myself off mute there. Yeah, definitely. It can be channeled. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, there's thrill seekers and guys that I sometimes watch out close by me. There's several mountains. I watch these guys climbing these peaks and with sometimes no ropes or safety nets or nothing or safety ropes. And I go, wow, I wouldn't do that. But there's something that, they're skilled in it. At the same time, I think I've always thought, well, sometimes we seek these death-defying feats because we're attempting, mortality, and it makes us feel, like you said, more alive. And so I think as people become actually more alive, because this has been the issue, people say, well, okay, we can live forever, maybe we'll cure aging and death, but we won't stop accidents. But the reality is we can stop a lot of accidents too, if not all of them, a large percentage of them. And that will happen as we create this new world. And because people will be more excited about life itself and the thrill of that. Right now, let's face it, I think all of us experience that with a lot of people. They don't experience the thrill that you do, Edward. I was happy to hear the thrill you experience, in just doing your work. That was beautiful. But most people don't experience that. You know that. We face people, they don't like their jobs. They hate their life. They can't wait till Friday. When it's Monday, they say, oh no, they're back in their work. So they get no thrill out of life. I'm thrilled to be alive because of what I'm doing too, and no matter what the challenges come up. So I think, I do think that there's a thrill in living that more people will need to take on. And that's part of our job, I think, to transmit that excitement about being alive, because there's been more excitement in people about dying and going to some heaven somewhere, some place they make up, than there is really the excitement about being alive. So this is all why I'm talking today about what I'm talking about, because again, I'm tapping into this, and I'd like us to even discuss that more as we move along, not only today, but I welcome any of your comments to me after this. Email me, feel free to call me. We talk about it at RadFest, more about, what is it what is the common denominator in our bodies that we can tap into that will give us the strength, the excitement, and the energy to achieve everything we want to achieve.
Yes. Thank you, Jim. And it seems to me perhaps this immortal bloodline that you mention is inherent to all humans, in the sense that humanity is the species that strives to overcome its limitations. By nature, we're not content with the status quo, and we have certain faculties, we have our rational minds that enable us to solve problems, that enable us to create a better world than the one we find ourselves in. But the clear expression of that motive can sometimes be difficult to reach for some people, precisely because they're beset by so many challenges, and it's so easy to excuse or rationalize away the pursuit of indefinite life and just say, well, death is a reality that we have to somehow accept. But from the earliest human history, I think some people have rebelled against death. And we see that, say, in the Epic of Gilgamesh. We don't know who the author of the Epic of Gilgamesh was, but it's interesting that perhaps the first work of literature in human history talked about overcoming death and the quest of King Gilgamesh for immortality. So there's some attribute of humans that is inside us that can be brought out through certain techniques that I think drives us to live longer, to overcome our mortality. And I wonder, Jim, in terms of ways to bring that out in people, especially people who might not have been convinced of the necessity of radical life extension as children, but who could still contribute to that pursuit. What do you think could be done? What do you think is effective in this regard?
Well, in my experience at this point, the most effective thing is to be able to have communication like we're having today, okay, and continue this conversation, because within everybody, okay, is that we've had to deal with is a certain, I'll call it duality that we've all had to face. We have the mortal programming. We've been programmed in that from our genetics. We were all born into this world of death. So we have that program in us. And for some of us who have broke through that more than others, that's, what we're after. But we're also in us is we have this immortal programming. We have this immortal bloodline in our bodies, this immortal innate ability to live. Okay. And almost like this primal scream to stay alive in our bodies. But it's what we feed, right? It's the dog you feed that flourishes, right? And whatever you feed in your body is what's going to flourish. So that's part of what I'm saying here today. Let's feed this immortal bloodline. Let's try this. Let's go to places we've never gone before, because it's got to be there. It is there. I know that I've experienced it in my own body. But what is the depth of it? How far can we take it? How much ability? What capacity does our bodies really have to really regenerate, to really feel an energy like we've never felt before, to really create the task we need to create, and support the science we need to support. So yes, the best way that I have experienced in my own person is this type of communication we're having today. This isn't just words we're sharing with each other, although sometimes we just get caught up in words. We're sharing information that is actually can change the DNA, can change the response in each other's bodies. And it really creates a power of moving together that we've never had before. This is what we're in such desperate need of in this world today, right? A power of moving together for something higher, a higher purpose than just arguing and criticizing each other and being down on each other. We need a higher purpose. And to me, that higher purpose is to come in contact with that higher purpose in our bodies of staying alive. And really the true potential, the true meaning of what we're really about. And that's being physically immortal. And that's that immortal bloodline in our bodies. It speaks out to us, and we're calling that out to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you very much, Jim. And we've had some quite intriguing feedback from our viewers. So on the subject of thrill seeking, John H. wonders maybe we'll be able to have avatars which experience death-defying thrills and will connect to them vicariously. So a kind of have your cake and eat it too type of situation. It can already be done in virtual reality and in a more rudimentary way through certain computer games where one takes on the role of a character in a more extreme and somewhat dangerous situation, but one isn't physically exposed to that danger. So perhaps for the thrill seekers among us, those will be acceptable substitute experiences as long as they're vivid enough, but they can still stay safe in terms of their physical and biological bodies. That could be a way to bring them on board in terms of the pursuit of the preservation of the self, and they still get to have the experiences they want to have. Sergei Gubkin writes that this idea of death being something we've got to accept is similar to accepting tyranny, poverty, unjust imprisonments, wars, other hardships in life. And if we resign ourselves to them being inevitable, then we set ourselves up for a certain failure. On the other hand, if we choose to fight them, if we choose to resist them, then at least we have a fighting chance. And I think that's a very important observation. Now, Edward writes in our internal chat on Avatars and Thrills, see the opening of The City and the Stars by Arthur C. Clarke. It's also one of the first transhumanist novels. And Edward, do you want to say a little bit more about that?
I was just putting in what I thought was an interesting comment. No, one of my favorite novels, I'm a big science fiction fan, is Arthur C. Clarke's, I think it was a 1954 novel, The City and the Stars. And it starts off with, these folks in what looks like a real thrilling adventure and so on and so forth. And then it suddenly stops and the sort of not giving away the whole novel by any means. But what you discover is there's this civilization on Earth 1 million years in the future, and they're all confined to a city. For some reason, they never want to leave the city. It's the last human city. They're worried that space invaders had pushed everyone back 1 million years ago. But the interesting thing is, people will live a long but limited life, and then they'll walk into the Hall of Memories, and their beings will be saved in a computer, and then they will at a certain point come back and be reincarnated, so to speak, physically, with a lot of the memories that they had from their previous lives that they get to edit. And there's a whole thing about breaking out of the city and breaking out of this kind of prison that they put themselves in. But it's interesting that it starts off with this thrill seeking, but for this one character, that's not enough. He wants reality. Anyway, if for those of you interested in science fiction and Arthur C. Clarke, of course, I recommend that novel to you.
Yes, thank you, Edward. And another quite fascinating novel also from the golden age of science fiction that I think relates to this conversation quite well is Methuselah's Children by Robert Heinlein. Now, Heinlein wrote this in 3 installments in Astounding Science Fiction magazine in 1941, but then he published it as a book-length novel in 1958. But the premise of Methuselah's Children is that there is not so much an immortal bloodline, but a long-lived bloodline that was deliberately cultivated in this fictional world through selective breeding. So in that story, there was a short-lived entrepreneur named Ira Howard who died very young, but he wanted to advance the science of longevity and figure out how to make people live longer so that they didn't have the same predicament that he did. So he set up a foundation in the 19th century to essentially encourage long-lived people to breed with other long-lived people and essentially provide funding to their children. And over the centuries, this led to people living 150 to 200 years. And then the premise is these long-lived lineages called the Howard families have to conceal their existence from the broader society because essentially they don't think the broader society will understand essentially how they got to be so long-lived, and they might think they're concealing some sort of secret from everyone else. But the premise of the story is the secret breaks out, and this is sometime in the 22nd century when these families have to flee the earth on an expedited basis because otherwise they'll face extreme political persecution. And this book takes the reader through the journey of these long-lived families through the galaxy until they finally return by the time that the society on Earth is more accepting of their longevity. And they figured out actually how to engineer that longevity in others. So it's a fascinating concept. It's been discussed in science fiction as well. And also our friend Daniel Twett writes that Arthur C. Clarke's short story Dial F for Frankenstein inspired 9-year-old Tim Berners-Lee to invent HTTP and the World Wide Web. So there's a lot of influence from this golden age of science fiction on transhumanism and on our pursuits of greater longevity, technological innovation, improved human well-being. Jim, I'm wondering, what are your thoughts with regard to fiction and other kinds of artistic creation, for instance, poetry, in being able to inspire people, in enabling people to see the possibilities that could help in the pursuit of radical life extension?
Oh, I think it's so important. I think it's beautiful. You know, we have people with us at People Unlimited here that write poems and stories. You might, I'm sure all of you know Joe Bardeen. He just wrote a play that actually was performed here in Scottsdale for a week. A playhouse picked it up, and it is all about his basically being raised and the contrast between his beliefs in immortality and his family, and the way he depicted it is really fantastic. He had very, very good attendance for it. It played for about a week here in Scottsdale. And then also, one of the first books I read that was inspiring to me was Jitterbug Perfume. I don't know how many have read that. You might want to look that up if you get a chance. It was way back, I think, in the 80s I read that. It was all about an immortalist who traveled. He would never die, and he all of his experiences through where all of his friends were dying, and the whole scene, and it was very fascinating. It was the first book I ever picked up that I found that was actually depicted immortality in some more, I'll say, real sense, other than making immortals be vampires or something. So yeah, I think arts are so important to be able to express what we're about, and they're so inspirational to so many people. I like to see more. I'd like to see more music and songs about it. Right?
Yes, absolutely. I have a few musical compositions on the subject of life extension. Of course, the most direct one is Men's Struggle Against Death, which I composed in 2008. And I also have the Transhumanist March. Now, Joe Bardine's play is quite excellent as well. It's called Exit Dust.
Yes.
And there are some showings of it that one can find online, some recordings that I would recommend. Also, there is an essay that I wrote on Methuselah's children for anyone who is interested. This was an analysis that I published in 2014, the role of business in the virtuous cycle of progress, and Robert Heinlein's Methuselah's Children. So for anyone who wants to know more about that work of fiction, I would recommend this article. Now, Jason, you had some thoughts about thrill seeking that you wanted to express. So please go ahead.
Well, yeah, I find there's usually two types of people. Like when you walk out to the end of the diving board for the first time, there's types that'll jump, and then there's types that turn around and just go right back. I was a jumper, and and flipper and all kinds of stuff. Used to love adrenaline. Used to get into sports and all kinds of stuff. But honestly, like I didn't ride riding motorcycles because that was one's false move, and I knew I was kind of a little risky, so I just kind of avoided that because not a big fan of didn't want to die. So there's ways you can do stuff that will trigger your adrenaline where you don't have to die over it. You can do sports. There's being up on stage, in front of a bunch of people or something. There's lots of stuff. So I don't see that the adrenaline is necessarily a bad thing all in itself. Them are the kind of peoples, those are your doers. Those are the people that, really do something. And we kind of need them people, but I totally see your point that, it's not wise to risk your life just for a thrill. But it is fun, I'll admit. Back to you.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's interesting because that kind of thrill seeking, it does correlate, of course, with a certain degree of initiative and courage, which are important to achieve certain results in the world. And people like that, they often tend to have more energy, more of an ability to start ambitious projects without necessarily knowing what the outcome is going to be. So these are favorable traits, and we need to have those traits to some significant extent in our society for progress. But as you said, there could be ways to also channel that risk-taking or thrill-seeking impulse in directions that are safe for the individual body. And that way people get to experience the thrills they want to experience, but not be in serious danger as well. So I think those are valuable observations. Now, Jim, I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak about RADFest and how RADFest can help people essentially find the motivation to persevere in the pursuit of radical life extension during these challenging times. RadFest is going to be held in person this year for the first time since 2019. So tell us more about that and what we have to look forward to.
Yeah, thank you, Gennady. Yeah, and I'm really, like you said, I'm happy, so excited. We're coming back after 2 years of being virtual. A lot of people are biting the bit to be in person. There's people who are still a little bit nervous about it, but really we can do it safely, and we will do it safely. We've actually been meeting here at People Unlimited. We're very careful. I'm very careful, wear masks where I go, etc. And at People Unlimited, we've been meeting now for about almost 4 months, and I've never had an infection out of the room. And so there's ways to do it that we can be together and be safe. So I want to encourage everybody who's listening to be there, because it's necessary. We need to come together in person. It's part of, I'll say, stimulating and bringing out the best of all of us. There's really no event like RadFest. There's many great events, okay, but there's no event like RadFest from the standpoint of the camaraderie in it. There's no backbiting of or unnecessary criticism of the scientists. They work together, but there's, everybody will say their opinions, healthy debate sometimes, but they're all working together for the same purpose, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. And it's great to see all the public that come that just really are activists and advocates for radical life extension, and we want to build that up. I was talking to Bella Falloon just last week, and really we're working every way. This year, RadFest we'll have a substantial event, but we're coming out of the pandemic, so it's going to take a little time to build it up where we want to again. I think for 23, we're working to really have a really enormous showing. People will feel more and more confident as we go along. But this event is going to be special because it's our first time coming back together, and we're also giving for those who haven't registered, we're giving a special offer right now. You can go on www.radfest.com on the website and click onto that. And there's a substantial discount. We try to make the event, we're a nonprofit, so we try to make the event very affordable to everybody. It costs a lot to do an event, as most of you know that have been involved at all in this kind of thing. Some people might think, well, it's a little expensive, but you compare this to other events and what you get, you'll see that it's not. That really, we've really priced it, really fairly, because the registration comes with meals. It comes with the entire event, both the Rad City Hall, where all the exhibitors are, and the main hall. So it's going to be a fabulous event. I mean, I'm glad you're coming, Gennady. You too. Yeah, Doug, fantastic. All you guys, we're going to have a beautiful time together. And any comments you want to make about it is great too. But I'm just grateful we're being able to have it this year. We were able to get a good hotel, the San Diego hotel that we were in the first year in 2016. Now it's completely remodeled it. They've done, it was about $90 million into this hotel. And so it's completely remodeled and it's beautiful. So we're going to have a beautiful time.
Yes, thank you very much, Jim. And for those who would like to learn more, please visit the RadFest website. I have it posted here at radfest.com. Also, please see this announcement on the U.S. Transhumanist Party website. It's entitled U.S. Transhumanist Party to Participate in RadFest 2022. The reason why I am recommending that you go to this page is you can get a special discount code to register for RadFest and get $201 off of the listed registration fee. So that's a substantial savings. If you enter the code transhuman22 when you register, you will be able to realize that savings. So we want more people to visit RadFest in person and have the kinds of conversations that we were able to have there in the first few years of RadFest. I really found this event to be quite valuable in helping build our network, helping build the communication channels that form an essential part of our movement, because ultimately we need to have the ability to engage in long-form conversations about our respective projects, about our areas of interest, and find some surprising ways that we can collaborate with one another. I think one of the best purposes of RADFest is as a venue for making these kinds of connections and even discovering what one might not have been aware of and what one wouldn't have been aware of otherwise. But by going there, seeing thousands of people, interacting with them in a variety of combinations, one opens oneself up to this vast world of the pursuit of life extension and the many projects, both from a scientific standpoint and an activism standpoint, that are ongoing in this world. So I hope to see many of you there. If you do arrive at RADFest and you see me there, please feel free to approach me, and I'm sure we'll be able to have a great conversation about longevity, about philosophy, about politics, about current events, anything that you take an interest in. So thank you, Jim, for that particular overview. Now, could you tell us a bit more about some of the scientists who will be there? I know Bill Andrews will be there, Liz Parrish will be there, and they're familiar to our viewers. And of course, Dr. Edward Hudgens will be there as a sponsor of RADFest. Is there anyone else whom you would like to highlight for our audience, Jim?
Yeah, well, let me say to begin with, I'm really glad Ed's going to be there again because he always adds a lot. And again, Ed, thank you for everything you're doing. Good job. Ed keeps in good communication. He's a real great advocate for radical life extension. Yeah, we have some Dr. Hebert, who you might have heard of. It's a whole new topic to RADFest in the context that he's talking about the different body parts transplantations, and for keeping us alive. That's going to be very exciting. And we also have some really great doctors going to be talking about plasma exchange. Dr. Martinez, Greta Blackburn is going to head that panel. She's actually been working with a couple of these doctors. I'm trying to think of the other doctor's name. I don't have that in front of me, but that'll be a blood plasma panel that will be really going to the depths of what it is to the results and the benefits of doing blood plasma exchange. And so it's really advanced work that's being done on that level. So what we've done is broke most every one of our speakers down into panels this time, so we can really stimulate not only giving them an opportunity to express what they're doing, but also to give them an opportunity then to actually have exchange between each other. So we have some great stem cell panelists, for example, Dr. Joy Kong out of LA, Dr. Chan will be back, Michael Chan, many of the top stem cell doctors who, Dr. Davis, many others that are just doing that fabulous work in this field. So we're going to have a better lineup, I'll say a stronger lineup than we've ever had of people doing amazing work, right? So, what one other is vital about letting people know about RADFest who don't know too much about it is focus is actually age reversal, although we go into a lot of the wellness areas. So it's the only event in the world that actually is main focus is age reversal concepts. And of course, to get there, there's all kinds of great wellness protocols that are introduced too. But the focus is really age reversal. And that's what makes it really special on that level, because that's the edge, that's the very working edge of super longevity. And that's what we're really after, right? So that's what makes it very, very exciting. And it stimulates these conversations, like you said, between each other that are really extraordinary.
Yes, thank you, Jim. And I've posted here a link to our previous virtual Enlightenment Salon with Jean Hébert, who speaks about replacing aging. So his concept of incremental replacement of brain tissue to prevent brain aging and reverse aspects of brain aging. I think it's quite creative and intriguing. And for anyone who wants to learn more, please watch that virtual Enlightenment Salon. I also wanted to highlight our previous Virtual Enlightenment Salon with Joe Bardeen, where we discussed art and writing and cultural creation to a great extent. And of course, Joe will be there at RadFest as well. It's always a pleasure to converse with him. And now I wanted to ask our panelists if you have any questions for Jim based on anything that we've discussed today. So let's start with Art Ramon.
Yeah, nothing came to mind, but since I'm on the spot, when you say the immortal bloodline, is that the term? Immortal bloodline?
Yes.
That reminds me of how the body has the capacity to create stem cells. So is that any way something like maybe some fifth dimensional, high frequency evolution, where you can get all of the cells in your body to sort of generate some sort of stem cell property and rejuvenate themselves? Have you heard of anything like that where you can spontaneously get your cells to like turn into stem cells, like your whole body?
Well, that's quite a beautiful concept you're expressing in itself. I think the body, we don't really know the full capacity, the regenerative powers of our body, because we've never really gone there to that depth, that I'm talking about now. We haven't, I'll use in simple terms, we haven't trusted our body. We haven't, for many people, the body's been seen as a bag of bones, and we haven't really given it the credit, the healing powers that it has. Actually, I don't know if Bill Andrews is still on the line, but he was telling me this morning that when we were talking about this, he said the body, if you actually believe that, for example, if you have cancer or any other disease, and you actually believe that you can get over that, and you actually feed that thought, and you emphasize that in your own body, not just going further than positive thinking, that'll make all the difference. They know they have the science on it, that'll actually make all the difference in the world in your healing. In fact, more likely than not, if you come to that true conviction, you will not die of that disease. So in that sense, we've always known that the human body has powers of regeneration, but we've never taken to this point that I'm talking about now. And I would say, on one level, yes. I mean, by tapping into this bloodline, there's energy in that to enable us to keep living and to stay alive. And really, is it the full answer in that context? I wouldn't say from that place, but I do say it's the foundation of what we need to have to be able to create everything else we need to create to stay alive. The science and everything else and the vision and the intelligence to be able to apply the things we need for keeping our life, and not be complacent about doing things that will keep our life or keep us alive. So the body's miraculous in this sense, and I think it is to a big degree about tapping into those miraculous powers that are there. One person said to me, "Well, it's not just," when I was expressing this to them, they said, "Well, it's not just miracles, because it's really what we naturally should be." In other words, the question is, have we always been limiting ourselves because of our lack of understanding of the regenerative powers of our body? Have we always not trusted that? Have we always looked outside ourselves for the answer? And that's why I was talking about Jesus the way I was, because he was saying really at that time that the kingdom is here now, but nobody could get it. And what was he talking about? To me, he was talking about that everything we really need to begin to create life is in our bodies now. It comes from inside us, not from outside somewhere. So I would say, yes, there's a regenerative energy in our bodies to create. Who knows what that'll bring about? But for sure, by tapping in, I've experienced this myself. By tapping into this new energy in our bodies, we will have the foresight, we will create the opportunities, and we'll have the vision to create what we really need to create to be totally healthy, to really have the prosperity that we really want and the abundance of health for our bodies. So that's how I look at it. if that explains more where I'm coming from.
Yeah, ever since I got COVID, I've been, experiencing a lot of chronic fatigue, and I've been doing the cold showers like Wim Hof sort of recommends doing to put your body in discomfort, because he says that it helps your body generate a human growth hormone. So that's one thing I've been doing. I'm a little lazy about doing the breathing techniques, but Wim Hof, if you know of him, he's able to do some miraculous feats with just meditation and his breathing technique. So anything to add about Wim Hof?
Well, I do. Yes, thank you for mentioning him. I love him. I do the saunas and the cold dips. They're fantastic. Now one other thing I'd say, just from experience from around the people that I know have had COVID and overcome it, and situations like you've got, it's also very important to do really high power, right at this point for your health, high power intensive IVs. Okay, if you're not doing them, vitamin C, zinc, glutathione, these kind of things in them. There's probably doctors in your area that know these formulas very well. Most of the time you have to go to either a holistic doctor or a naturopath to get these, but they're very prevalent now. And if you're not doing those, I'm telling you, along with this other stuff, these people are getting amazing results from doing these IVs and doing ozone therapy. If you haven't heard of that, it oxygenates the blood. It kills viruses. It's been very successful. I don't know if you know Dr. Cleaver, Joe Cleaver, who's actually spoke at RadFest several times. He's a big advocate of that. I was talking to him the other day. In fact, he will be at RadFest, and he has a whole toolkit because he's always treating people with long COVID. And he actually, this guy is amazing. He actually was going from house to house during the main COVID, times where it was really prevalent everywhere and people were dying of it. He was going from house to house saving people's lives with these different protocols that he's got in his bag. But so if you want, if you contact me, I can put you in touch with him for more ideas too. But there's ways to get over this, what you're experiencing, this long, basically it's long COVID, it's COVID reactions. And so, we can help support you in that.
Yeah, it's I've had the chronic fatigue like almost since mid 2020. I think I contracted it, COVID, in December of 2019. So I think I got like the variant, and it hit me hard for 3 days of hard, dry coughing, and then it seemed to go away. But then like a cough lingered. But yeah, since mid 2020, I've just had really bad chronic fatigue. And now I found out I had some sort of heart issue that I need to get diagnosed. It's like when I exercise, my heart rate goes up to like 145, 160, and then it just drops to below 100 and it stays there. And I'm continuing to exercise, but my body's not getting enough oxygen. So my whole entire body hurts. So I'm not able to push myself physically to stay in shape now. Because of this heart condition.
Yeah, I understand, Art. It's a terrible thing, but you can get over this. And I don't know if you know Dr. Doneen, but she's also works with heart inflammation a lot. She's spoken at RadFest. She's one of the best in the country around this kind of treatment. And she's up in I think the Oregon area. I don't know where you're located, but she's got also for helping take care of, because what's happened is you've created a lot of inflammation in your body from the COVID, and that's why you're really having this condition, and it's it's tearing down your immune system and creating a lot of like you say, wear and tear on your body and lack of energy, and so but there's ways to take care of this. So if you want to reach out to me after this sometime, I can help get you that information.
Okay, I'll shoot you an email. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Jim and Art Ramon. I think we are living in a very challenging time, particularly because not much is known about long COVID yet and what triggers it in some people versus others, how to deal with some of the effects. So really some creative thinking and creative experimentation are called for, precisely because I think through a community of longevity enthusiasts such as this one, there's a much greater probability of discovering treatments that work, discovering remedies that hopefully will help millions of people overcome this terrible condition. So one of the ideas that was mentioned with regard to regeneration is stem cells. And the resource I will offer is the Wikipedia article on induced pluripotent stem cells. So, of course, this was done in the late 2000s when scientists were able to take somatic cells of the human body, like skin cells, and regenerate them into stem cells. And that is a more advanced technique than just using embryonic stem cells. So science is beginning to figure out these regenerative mechanisms, but of course a lot more study is needed. And hopefully at RADFest we'll hear more accounts from the cutting edge of the research, how it has advanced in recent years and what some of the emerging possibilities are. But I think speaking to the broader point with regard to motivation, the motivation within a community that is so enthusiastic about the promise of radical life extension can lead to more of these discoveries, can lead to more scientific studies being funded, can lead to more medical treatments being developed, because that enthusiasm can translate into the broader culture expressing this as a worthwhile pursuit, as something that people value. Aubrey de Grey has spoken about an inflection point that he sees coming in the next few years when essentially the priorities of many people will shift, likely overnight, if they recognize that, yes, a radical life extension in one's own lifetime is feasible. And those priorities will shift even before the technology to completely reverse biological aging will become available. So we need to get people prepared for that eventuality. And we need to get the political systems, the cultural institutions aligned with responding to that surge in demand once it occurs. So, Jim, what do you think can be done to prepare the broader society for that shift in attitudes when maybe even sometime later this decade, we will be dealing with millions of people who suddenly, for them, get an epiphany that, oh, this is possible. This can happen within my lifetime. What do we do now? And we're more experienced with this kind of mindset. So how can we help those people when they approach us?
Wow, that's yeah. I like how Aubrey put that. That's great. Aubrey put that. That was. I'm hoping to see him at RADFest this year too. I know Jyothi's going to be speaking there. But on that note, I think the best thing we can do is be able to be really prepared ourselves as we are, and moving towards more and more to be able to be there for those people on a deep, psychological and emotional level, because I think there's going to be a big upheaval on one level, and it's going to be a good upheaval if that's what you're talking about. I say millions of people suddenly getting an epiphany, or suddenly overnight getting that they can have radical life extension. There's going to be a lot of questions to answer. I think that's why collectively, as we're moving, that's one of the purposes of RADFest and why we created it, is to create a atmosphere that people could come, get their questions, not only get their questions answered and help them with their health and their longevity, but also to give them a support system for this transition, okay? Because it is a big transition. I mean, people come in there new to RADFest, as you know, and just like you're speaking here of people who would be exposed to this, they come in new to RADFest, and some of them will come up to me and act like, well, they don't know what's going on. They feel something, it feels good to them, but they said, how do I get to this transition? And so, but once they experience that there's, a lot of people that are in this same, we're all in this together, and they begin to feel this, they get more comfortable with it, And I just tell them, hey, be patient with yourself. There's new things to get here in your own person. Don't feel like you're going to be left out. Be patient. Just be present in what's happening, and you'll pick up. And sure enough, by the end of the event, a lot of times they'll come to me and they'll go, wow, thank you. I got so much out of this, and I feel totally different than when I walked in here. And so I think that's a big key thing for us, is to really be collectively moving together in a strong way, that we're ready for this big influx, because it will happen, like you're saying.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Jim. And now, Jason, do you have any questions for Jim?
Well,
Jason, let me interrupt for a second.
Go ahead.
Yes, it's okay if you dive off the diving board.
Right? Yeah. And do flips. I like those. Anyway, back to that last question. For me, just hearing a for real scientist saying, hey, look, the science is almost here. This is for real. That was a big motivator for me. So yeah. I think that really helped. And going back to what you were saying about like Christianity and, the future and transhumanism, I see it kind of the same way, really, that, I used to be really religious. And when I started seeing the science and where it's going and what's coming in the future, it clicks together. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's what was talking about, Now that might be just me placing my own, whatever over it, to try to make sense out of it. But it sure seems like that is the future that was being spoke about. And so this whole idea about, transhumanism being fringe or what, I see it as an inevitability. This is just the natural evolution of man. We're just going to, and so I'm not worried about, transhumanism being fringe or nothing like that, because this is just stuff that's just going to happen. So that's, pretty cool. And the question I did have for you, though, is what does RAAD from Radfest actually stand for, and how'd you guys come up with that name?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, RAAD stands for Revolution Against Aging and Death. Okay, yeah, that's what we're really in. When we came up with that name, we thought we got to have something that is more impactful than just another science name. In fact, I went to some of the scientists, including Bill Andrews, and they said to me, "Please don't create just another boring event." I discussed this with them, because sometimes we get bored in our own events and we walk out of them. We stand in the hallway. So please try to create something. So first of all, we wanted a dynamic name for it. And the reality is we are in a revolution. Okay, we're in a revolution against aging and death. That should be, and I tell people at Radfest, we shouldn't be fighting each other. Okay, we should be fighting our worst enemy, aging and death. And that's been my motto from the time on. Let's quit fighting each other. It's ridiculous. Let's put our energy into fighting our real enemy. So we named it that. And how we came up with that too is that we thought, okay, so they want, they don't want something boring. So why don't we have something like a Woodstock, okay, for radical life extension, something festive and fun. So that's what we did too. We made it festive. We have dancing, we have singing, we have parties, we have the science. At first, I think Gennady can bear witness to this. It was kind of funny because a lot of the people were like, oh, what is this at the science event? All this music, and we know we had this dancing, right, Gennady?
Yes, it was an interesting combination. Definitely unprecedented, I think, for these kinds of science-focused events, but clearly you were able to pull it off, and I think every year it has been refined so that the mix of science and entertainment kind of has been calibrated to get the best response from the attendees. So I think you've been doing a good job learning from experience and doing something this innovative.
Yeah, thank you. So a big part of that too is the science that we know has been very calculated, that music and entertainment, especially music, helps people learn, actually, to have a break in music, to have something, and even when they stretch out or dance a little bit, it gets that, both sides of the brain moving. And so it helps people learn. So we knew that too. And so we instrumented all that there. And plus, the public, we want to get the public in, not just the scientists, because up until that time in radical life institute movements, we only had 250, maybe 300 people, the maximum, ever show up, and most of them were just doctors or scientists. So we wanted to bring in the public to educate them and to create what's called a critical mass, and to actually bring this message to the world. And that's what we're after. So that explains that. That's what it's about.
Good idea. Bring them in and then don't bore them stiff.
Exactly.
Good plan, man.
Exactly.
All right. So our friend Jennifer Hughes writes, every idea in history is fringe until it becomes mainstream. And this is in reference to the inflection point that Aubrey de Grey believes is coming with regard to the public acceptance of radical life extension. And indeed, why shouldn't this be a mainstream idea, given that generally fighting disease is a mainstream idea when it comes to specific diseases like heart disease, like cancer, like Alzheimer's disease? A lot of people think it's worthwhile to fight those debilitating conditions, and they will donate a lot of money in order to support those kinds of efforts. Yeah. So some sort of switch metaphorically needs to flip inside their minds to get them to realize that fighting biological aging is like that. There is no essential difference between fighting biological aging and fighting those diseases that the majority of people agree are worthwhile to fight.
Yeah.
So, Edward, do you want to elaborate a bit?
Yeah, just on that point, one of the things I've been doing, because I deal with influencers and people like that, is, for example, pointing out, if you take a look at Sen's, Aubrey's breaking down of the processes that constitute aging. One of the things I find is useful is to say, okay, well, we're talking about how do we deal with Alzheimer's? My 90-year-old mom has Alzheimer's. How do you deal with cancer? Most of those ailments come later in life. You certainly know this if you look at the budgets of Medicare and all that sort of thing. But what I do is I say, well, you know what? Here are some things that you can do that are prophylactic, as it were, that could basically head off some of these terrible things before they happen. So let's take a look at mitochondrial mutations. Let's take a look at telomere shortening, which of course is one of Bill Andrews' big things, and so forth. And when I start talking to people about that, then I'm sort of getting into, wow, we can head off this sort of stuff. And of course, now we're talking about ending aging. And we're doing it in a context that a lot of people can understand more than if we just come at them and say everybody should read Aubrey's book, which everybody should read Aubrey's book, by the way. But, by the way, I want to take the opportunity just to thank Jim. I was at the first RadFest in 2016. I know, Gennady, I saw you there. I was able to meet a lot of the people who I knew about. Aubrey de Grey. I knew Jose before that, but everyone knows Jose. Hi, Jose. Bill Andrews, Liz Parrish, Zoltan Eastbahn was there, lots of others. And it was one of the best conferences I've ever been to. And I've been to conferences for decades. And so I just wanted to thank Bill for that. And I'm looking forward to this year as well, because again, I start to see with COVID, by the way, I had COVID as well about a month ago. I'd had 3 shots and I lost my taste, and it's like a cold for a couple of days, but I'm pretty much back now. My throat's a little bit scratchy, but I still can jog 50 minutes a day. So that's the good news. But again, I just want to thank Jim for the incredible work that he's done with these events. I was at the last couple, of course, virtually because, because of COVID, but I'm very much looking forward to the one coming up in San Diego, and I'll be promoting it as well. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ed. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And I think we're all looking forward to being there. I hope that the Biden administration, Yes, there are Edward and Jose and Aubrey from.
That was from Freedom Fest.
Yes, Freedom Fest. I recognize the background in Las Vegas.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was one of the we had 2 or 3 panels, and we had a lot of people at Freedom Fest talking about how the real scientists that they were, getting, FDA was getting in their way. They had to go offshore. Of course, Liz wasn't there, but that's part of her story. And so again, I was able to make contacts with these folks, expose them to Aubrey de Grey, and basically, this is how you expand the message and the vision. You do it that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So I am hoping that by the time that RADFest comes around, the Biden administration will fulfill its promise of getting the Omicron subvariant specific vaccine boosters out to the public, because I think for many people, myself included, that's going to greatly increase their comfort level in terms of traveling and attending large events. I would be essentially completely comfortable with attending a conference like RADFest if I got one of those boosters. And that would be my 5th vaccine dose, by the way. So I think I've kept myself safe from COVID in part because I, let's say, maneuvered my way into getting a second booster in April, just before the wave of the new Omicron subvariants arose. So I was lucky in that way because of that temporary boost in immunity that I received. But having these vaccines specifically adapted to the Omicron subvariants, I think, is going to help a lot of people. Now, we have some interesting observations from Mike Lezine, and these are very much aligned with the mission of the U.S. Transhumanist Party and what we're trying to achieve in the broader American society. But in terms of motivation to fight death and disease, he identifies a clear obstacle. He writes, "Tell that to the Americans who are entrapped in the two-party system because they do really well with fighting each other." And Jim, you were talking about death and disease being our common enemies, but so many people, unfortunately, are quite myopic these days. They're stuck in this mindset of hating half of the country, whichever half they think is antithetical to their particular values or their particular political visions. And really, we need to drive the point home that we have bigger enemies to concern ourselves about. And how do you think we could effectively get across that message, especially to people who are stuck in this two-party trap, who really focus more about seeing, quote, the other side as evil rather than seeing death and disease as the true evils that we need to fight?
Yeah, it's really an unfortunate thing to see. It's painful to see people at each other this way. Everywhere I go, I make that statement. We shouldn't be fighting each other. We should be fighting our worst enemy, aging and death. And the more we can all say this everywhere, I think people lack deep purpose. I mean, to ask why that is going on. So they get caught up in these squabbles of survival. It's all part of the survival syndrome. And it's all the more reason why I've been saying we have to get out of survival and get into the activity. And this is where the consciousness, not only the I'll say the end result of creating longevity will take us, but even the consciousness of that takes us there to into creativity. And that's why I'm talking about this bloodline, this immortal bloodline, because we can now experience the end of this struggle that was in one level already finished 2,000 years ago. Because I think that's, again, what Jesus did is he ended a struggle, then saying that the kingdom is here now. In other words, we don't have to keep struggling with each other about all these indoctrination, these doctrines. We can begin to live a full life now. And I think we can do that very same thing now. And that was in the biggest message. I think it was in a bigger message to people across the planet, that there's people who are actually dedicated to a higher purpose and they're not fighting each other. Okay, they're fighting their worst enemy. And when we do that, it takes us into an era of creativity, and that's where we want to be. So I talk to people all the time. I don't know how you do, but when I'm out sometimes in the public, usually when I go out in the public, if I sit and I go to a restaurant, I sit in the patio. But anytime I get a chance to talk to people, I'll talk about this higher purpose. They'll ask me, "What do you do?" And I get right into that. So the more people that we can relate that to, and you know what, I've talked to some people not too long ago, and now I've spread this to people and limited people to do the same thing, and it's transforming some people. I mean, I was talking to a guy, a diehard guy who, in the context of everybody's bad, it's not in his side, and he was really ranting about it. And I started talking to him about, wow, I said, look, I understand where you're coming from on one level, but we got to quit fighting each other. We're not each other's enemy. Our enemy, our enemy is the death we face in the world. The people you lose that you love, everything else that wants to destroy our very substance. And so he started looking at me, and I said, so why don't we start working to fight that together? And so immediately calmed him down. And so I think that's some of the biggest things we can do. All of us speaking up in this way, let's quit fighting each other and not do it. I mean, I've had people call me and want to fight with me about some topic, and I'll just go, hey, you know what? I'm not gonna argue with you about that. We got bigger things to do, and I'll change the subject to something that maybe we both can really latch onto, something that is bigger than that little argument they want to get into. So I think that's the best way for me that I'm seeing, and that's again, Janata, you've said, like even last RadFest, you spoke some amazing things along this line of humanity that were beautiful. The more we can do that together, and the more we can set an example of all of us coming to RadFest, that here's 1,000 or more people, and let's build on that. Let's build thousands of people. Let's get a coliseum filled with people that are building each other rather than tearing each other down. We can do that. If we can do it with 1,000 or two, we can do it with thousands, and I think even millions.
Yes. Thank you very much, Jim. And you referenced the longevity activism panel during the 2021 RadFest, which was moderated by Joe Bardeen and Ilana Leah, and featured, along with myself, our friend Dr. Jose Cordero, Neil Vandery, Maria Intrigus Abramson. All of them have been our guests at our virtual enlightenment salons as well. So that was a great discussion. I would encourage everyone to watch it. Now, our friend Jennifer Hughes brought the conversation back to Jesus with regard to Jesus's injunction to love one another. And I think that relates to the spirit of positivity that you were communicating, the effort to find common ground, ways to move forward together, even when one is faced with someone who is trying to be a bit adversarial. But she does write also, it's hard when you are struggling just for basic needs to be able to think about larger issues like life extension. And she observes some people's lives are such a struggle that they look at indefinite life as a continuation of this struggle. And Jennifer has some perspective because she ran for mayor of Camden, New Jersey. She was actually the first mayoral candidate in the United States, as far as we're aware, to explicitly advocate for life extension as part of her platform. So she would go door to door collecting petition signatures, and she got enough petition signatures to get onto the ballot. But I think she was encountering some of those responses. Camden is an area that does have a lot of poverty, unfortunately, and some people may have told her essentially what she related, that they're struggling to get their basic needs met. And these days, especially with the economic disruptions that we've had, the supply chain issues, the impacts of the pandemic, inflation, now a likely recession, a lot of people are struggling to get their day-to-day needs met. So, Jim, how could we keep their spirits up? It's one thing to keep our spirits up if we're a bit better off in terms of our material circumstances, but for people who really have to worry about where their next meal is coming from, how can we get them on board? How can we get them to keep the long-term goal in focus, to keep the big picture in focus, and recognize that they too should be interested in radical life extension, that this too is ultimately the solution to their problems? How do we get them to see this?
Yeah. That's a big one, and a big shout out to Jennifer for her work in that level. And it's not easy. When people are struggling in survival, it's hard for, to feed their kids or to just get a decent housing, whatever. But I think the message that I think we need to begin to put out stronger even is that this is not just some wild idea. It's an answer. Okay. It's an answer to their situation, really. That by going for longevity, by going for the quality that longevity represents, it's going to elevate, okay, their situation. It's going to elevate for sure their consciousness that they're not just in a position that has to remain that way, that sometimes it takes time to get out of situations. And that's one reason why we want to create super longevity, is because really, as individuals, human beings that have lived, 67, whether it's 30, 40, 50, 80, 90 years old, we still don't really even know who we are as human beings, because most of us, all of us on some level, have been in survival. We haven't broke through this barrier. And so it's another reason why we need more time, why time is, in that context, unlimited time is so important, to not only get out of survival ourselves, but to understand ourselves on a deeper level, and who we are as human beings and what we're meant to be. I know with people in poverty, in that context and struggling, also, I personally give to them. I mean, sometimes, money is a great thing. I go down the road and I'm driving, and some guy or woman is standing in the corner with a sign, and they need money. I hand them some. Now, some people will say, oh, they're just going to go spend it on drugs, or they're going to spend this or that. Hey, I'm not supposed, to me, that's part of the principle of Jesus. He said, when someone asks to give, don't always analyze and question what their motive is. Let them do what they're going to do with it. But part of that is, and I had a guy, I gave other day, just yesterday, gave him $10, reached out of my car window, gave him $10. The look that was on his face when I gave him $10, that lifted his spirit. I could have gone by him and just said, hey, brother, I hope you do well today, or have a happy day. Well, he would have said thank you. But when I handed him that money, it was a message that, hey, I'll not only talk to you, but I'll give you some money, So I think that's a big thing too. There's plenty of money in the world. We need to share that. We need to be conscious that we need to share our abundance that's there. I'm into that. There's plenty of money in the world. It's just a lack of distribution that's off. Okay. And there's plenty of food in the world, but there's not the distribution that could be. So this is all, again, out of that principle of this immortal bloodline, that we begin to really see that there's answers here for everybody, but we have to be proactive in it, I guess, in the simple terms. So I really commend Jennifer for her work in that level. I want to encourage her to not stop.
Yes, thank you very much, Jim. And I would say you're a very generous man. You're generous with not just your money, but with your time and your insights. And anybody who wants to hear more of Jim's insights, please go to RadFest. And please also watch our previous Virtual Enlightenment Salon with Jim, which we held in June of 2020. I think it's always a pleasure to hear Jim speak, because he conveys this passion for the pursuit of longevity, for overcoming problems, and for getting people aligned to support what Nikolai Fyodorov, the great Russian cosmos thinker, called our common task. So thank you very much, Jim. Unfortunately, our time today is at an end, but I thoroughly enjoyed our Virtual Enlightenment Salon, and I appreciate you bringing the message of longevity advocacy to our viewers in such a powerful and inspiring way. So on behalf of the U.S. Transhumanist Party, thank you so much to you, Jim. Thank you to our panel. Thank you to our audience. And until next time, I hope you live long and prosper.
Thank you.